I'm Hillary Hendershot, your host, and this is Profit Boss Radio, episode 120. Profit Boss Radio is your weekly wealth mastermind. Profit Boss is also a community and a movement for women who are ready to take control of their money, break the glass ceiling, and give ourselves permission to finally have enough. Want the secrets of wealth to be yours? This is the place. I'm Hillary Hendershot. I'm a certified financial planner running a leading advisory firm for women, and I'm sharing with you real stories from real life and real women who are making it happen. Forget Wall Street. Let's do this, ladies. Hey, I'm excited to talk with you about today's topic. But first, I need to acknowledge that today's episode is late. I took a 2-week unannounced break, and it wasn't for no reason. I'm going to do an update episode about it after this episode. But basically, my husband and I have been consumed with health issues with my daughter. So I was just unavailable, and I do apologize. I don't take not publishing an episode on time lightly. So thanks for sticking in. Thanks for sticking with me, and thanks for staying subscribed. And let's get to today's topic. Today on Profit Boss Radio, we're talking about managing the costs of healthcare. I'm sure it's something that's been top of mind for many of you. Specifically, we're talking about making sure that paying for your own healthcare or things like long-term care or assisted living healthcare costs doesn't run you out of money. Part of today's episode is an interview with elder care attorney Nicole Whipp. But before we talk about Nicole, here are some statistics so you can understand why we need to be talking about this. Many of these statistics come from an August 2017 article by Christine Benz, published on Morningstar.com, which we will link to in the show notes for today's episode at hillaryhendershot.com/120. The expected percentage of people turning 65 who will have a long-term care need during their lifetimes is 52.3%, so half of us. However, it's estimated that some 83% of help provided to older adults is delivered by friends and family, meaning many people, in order to avoid the high costs of healthcare, will actually become caregivers or the recipient of in-home care provided by non-professional or non-paid caregivers. The percentage of women turning 65 who are expected to have a long-term care need during their lifetime is higher than the previous statistic at 57.5%. My interpretation of that is that it's likely just because we live longer. The average long-term care need for individuals over age 65 is 2 years of care. Women have a 36% probability of needing more than 1 year in a nursing home. 57.5% of people who turn 65 between 2015 and 2019 will spend less than $25,000 on long-term care during their lifetimes. But 15.2% of people who turn 65 between 2015 and 2019 will spend more than $250,000 on long-term care during their lifetimes. The median annual nursing home cost in 2016 was $82,125 for a semi-private room, whereas a private room cost $92,378. And the median average annual cost in 2016 of a private room in Manhattan was $164,250, while that same cost in Monroe, Louisiana was $63,875. Let's talk briefly about long-term care insurance. I know many of you have wondered if you should purchase long-term care insurance. Nicole and I discussed this briefly during our interview, but here are some facts that you should know. Getting a good long-term care policy is more and more difficult now, okay? Healthcare expenses are up, the complexity of claims is up, and many good insurers are throwing in the towel on the market altogether. It's just really difficult to provide a good long-term care insurance policy. The number of long-term care policies sold in 1990 was 380,000, while the number sold in 2014 was 129,000. Okay, so obviously people got the idea that long-term care policies were needed, so they started buying them. And annual claims on long-term care policies in 2000 was 1.87 billion. And annual claims on long-term care policies in 2014 was $8.73 billion. So you can see from the point of view of the insurance company, it's getting very expensive to pay on those claims. And so, like I said earlier, many of those companies are just getting out of the game altogether. Okay, so now let's talk about today's topic, which is elder care or elder law planning. So first, what's an elder law attorney and how do you find one? Okay, according to the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys, elder law encompasses many different fields of law. An elder law attorney specializes in how to best use their knowledge to fit the needs of seniors. Some of these fields include preservation and transfer of assets to avoid spousal impoverishment when a spouse enters a nursing home. So if you're a married couple, an elder law attorney can help you avoid what they call spousal impoverishment, so spending down of your assets if your spouse enters a nursing home. Elder law attorneys can also help you navigate Medicaid, Medicare claims, estate planning, and probate, etc. According to care.com, an elder law attorney can work in conjunction with other professionals in various fields to coordinate care, legal protections, and financing. They can help you establish a healthcare power of attorney and possibly help you find the right long-term facility. They can help you protect your assets while maintaining eligibility for Medicaid and certain Social Security and Medicare benefits. An elder care attorney can establish guardianship for when a person is unable to make decisions for him or herself. And finally, can help with financial representation. So making sure your estate plan is in place and establishing a durable power of attorney. It's important to note that elder law attorneys don't necessarily specialize in every area affecting seniors. It does get really complex. So you need to ask into the specialties of the particular attorney that you've met with. I think many of you by now are starting to get the idea that this episode could be really useful and valuable for you if you are the spouse, the person who needs care, or the spouse of the person who needs care, but also if you're the child of a parent who might need care in the future. Okay, so listen from that perspective today. So who are we talking to today? Nicole Whipp is my guest. She's the founder and lead attorney of the Family and Aging Law Center, where she is actively involved in planning, care, money, and legal decisions with clients and their families on a daily basis. Nicole is sought-after expert on numerous topics relating to law, aging, money, and business, and has spoken on numerous stages nationwide, has authored a best-selling book on the subject, and is the host of a highly rated podcast. Her book is called Dear Mom and Dad, Help Me, Help You. And you can, again, find the link to that in today's show notes. During our conversation, Nicole pointed out that elder law planning is very distinct from estate planning. Estate planning is planning for the transfer of your assets when you die. Elder law planning is planning to preserve your assets from being spent down on healthcare costs while you are alive. So it's two very different things. And even though both types of planning use some of the same tools, including trusts and powers of attorney and the like, those would all be customized to your situation. So definitely see your attorney for a personalized plan. Also, according to Nicole, it's incredibly important that you look for an attorney who will fill out your benefit applications and protect your assets simultaneously. So be sure that your attorney has experience and success doing both of these at the same time. Also, Nicole says, and I second, do not take legal advice from anyone who isn't your lawyer. I have literally seen bad legal advice given by employees of the Trust and Estates Department at the bank. You would think these are people who know what they're talking about, but they just don't always. Very few people truly understand estate and elder care law. We both remind you that when you're under stress and somebody you love is in a medical crisis, even very intelligent people end up taking really, really bad financial and legal advice. Okay, so let's go ahead and get to today's interview. Nicole, make it simple for us. What is the intent of elder law planning? What is your goal when you work with your women clients?
My goal is to make sure that they don't outlive their money. That's the same as yours, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And so whether, and especially for women, this is such a big deal because women outlive men statistically.
That's right.
And so we have to be savvy about how we look at our money. And then on top of it, as women, and I'm about to make a generalization, but this is just based on my experience, women tend to be much more fearful about their financial future because I always, I do a lot of speaking and I'll say to people, the women in this audience, their biggest fear is that they're going to end up on the street in a cardboard box at the end of their life. I'm like, men, none of you ever think about that. And everybody laughs because they're all like, yeah. And you see heads nodding and the men are like, what do you mean? Of course, I never think about that. That won't happen to me. But the women are like, yeah, I am afraid of that. And so we're trying to get there. That's the same goal, is to not allow that to happen to us, no matter what the cost. So there's legal tools for that, and there's financial tools for that. The ideal is that they're working together. All right. So there are multiple different ways that assets can be protected from nursing home poverty. And I will tell anybody that's listening that, what I'm about to say is very state specific as well.
Uh-huh.
So every state has different rules about how these things work, but these generally are things that can be used. So certain strategies will be used in certain circumstances and certain won't. I think that at the end of the day, your audience can come away with something is that nursing home poverty is only inevitable if you allow it to be. There are legal strategies to protect your money from nursing home poverty. There are legal strategies to avoid nursing home poverty, but you have to seek somebody that actually knows what they're doing that can help you do that. That's the bottom line. And there's so many different types of paths to get there, but you can do it. And otherwise, though, the ramifications to the bottom line are significant.
And I'm kind of leading you a little bit, and this is so in your wheelhouse that I think to you, it doesn't even need to be said, but I need for us to articulate for the listener, what's the value of doing a grantor-based irrevocable trust? Why would they do that?
Okay, so there's two baseline things that people think they know but really don't that cause people to engage in bad decision making. And the first one is people by and large believe that if they have a will, that means that they're going to avoid probate. I want to make sure that people understand that a will is inherently a document intended for probate, and that in almost all cases, a will means that your family will go to probate upon your death. That's something that just blows people's minds. I mean, I've spoken in front of thousands of people at this point, and at least 80% of my audience tends to be like, what? People really believe that a will means you're going to avoid probate. Just, it does not. Okay.
And
so
what are
that's
the costs of probate?
So this is my definition of probate. Probate is a lawsuit you file against yourself with your own money on behalf of your creditors.
Okay.
And so
managed by the government.
Is a legal proceeding that somebody else is actually, whenever you go into a legal proceeding, that means the state is in charge, right? Mm-hmm. So you're putting your family members and your stuff through a legal proceeding that puts other people in charge. And in most states today, the process can take quite a bit of time. And, like in my market area, you're looking at a minimum, even for simple cases, of 7 to 9 months before your family's fully in control of your money. So there's a cost to that. It might not be a specific dollar cost, but there's an emotional, and sometimes, there are other costs to making people do those types of things. The hassle factor alone, right? There's a cost to the hassle factor.
Yes.
And then, there's the actual cost, the actual dollar amount. And listen, AARP did a study several years ago, and they said, wills are basically annuities for lawyers.
Wills are annuities for lawyers, meaning wills cause lawyers to keep getting paid and paid and paid.
Yeah, because, like a will might be cheap on the front end, but lawyers will make up for it exponentially on the back end during the probate process.
Right.
And so that's an example.
Okay.
So all of these, so that's probate, I say that definition, I say it sort of jokingly, but I do want your audience to know that it's 100% technically correct. Lawsuit, you file against yourself with your own money on behalf of your creditors. That's 100% technically correct about what probate is.
And the way to truly avoid probate is to have a trust, one of many kinds of trusts, right?
So then I'm answering your question in sort of a longer way, but I really feel like it's helpful to people to have these baseline understandings so they can then understand the value of the type of trust that you just asked me about.
Yes.
So then generally people are going to, if they want to avoid probate, they're going to have a revocable living trust. And a revocable living trust basically, in its essence, is designed to do everything that people thought that their will was going to do, right? It's the way that you transfer your assets outside of probate to the people that you love. Mm-hmm. it's a very effective tool for that purpose. But the revocable living trust, and this is the one thing that people really don't understand about it, is that it does not protect your assets at all in any way during your life.
Okay.
And I cannot tell you how many times people walk through the door of my office with the belief that because they have a revocable living trust that they're protected in some way.
Protected from
it's
what?
a false belief. They're not protected. The only thing that you're protected from with a revocable living trust is probate, provided your trust has been properly funded. And that's a whole nother issue, right? Is probate. The trust does not protect you from lawsuits. It doesn't protect you from creditors, and it doesn't protect you from the nursing home.
Mm-hmm. So if you have a brokerage account that's titled to your trust, it's
to
still
your revocable living trust.
Your revocable living trust. So you're not dead yet. Then someone could sue you in a civil suit and take part of that account.
Correct.
Yeah. Got it.
You could go in the nursing home, and the full value of that account is going to be subject to the rules of your state and the Medicaid rules in your state. So yes, you could get sued. People can just put their hand in the cookie jar and take from you, right? Yeah. And that's the revocable living trust. It does not protect you from those things. And yet, Hillary, people have this weird belief that it does. The value of a grantor-based irrevocable trust is going to be that you can have some control over what's inside that trust. Like if you have a brokerage account inside that trust, you can still manage and dictate the different assets mixes and all those kinds of things, and how you're going to divide your assets among different strategies that are legally allowed, right? Mm-hmm. But you have now closed the door to that cookie jar. I say it's more like a safe, right? You put your stuff inside, you turn the lock, only you have the ability to open that door and hand things out, but your creditors can't reach in.
Okay. So literally, I'm laying there in a nursing home bed and my assets are in a grantor-based revocable trust. How do things play out for me?
Well, provided that it's all been done properly, and there's a lot of things that are related to this that would need people to have a real consultation with somebody about it. However, depending on what your family has decided for you, who you've determined is going to make your decisions, that those assets are not necessarily going to be able to be captured by the nursing home or the state in which you reside for the cost of that care.
Okay.
And the reason why this is important is because for many of our clients, the fear of that happening is what also causes people to make very poor decisions about what type of care they're going to receive. So to shelter the assets can, even in some ways, even if we do end up spending them, at least can help people get to a place of making good decisions as opposed to making panic-based or illogical decisions.
And there is a wide range of facilities that are available. You can choose from Volkswagen quality care to Cadillac quality care. And so if I have my assets in an irrevocable trust, don't I end up in some government facility with 6 people to a room?
Nope. But what we know, I don't even say what I believe, it's what I absolutely know because I do this day in and day out, is by having this type of plan, our clients, for example, are in some of the best facilities in the area with this exact type of planning in place. But it's because they planned that they're in the best facilities and they're protecting their money. It's happening simultaneously.
So who's paying for their care?
It's a combination of their own income and Medicaid are the two sources. But we're doing this to protect the spouse.
Say more about that.
Well, because, so for example, the law says that the most that the at-home spouse gets to keep is around, and I'm going to be very generalizing here because this is different for each state, but there are federal rules that are associated with this, around, let's say, $120,000 a house and a car. But if you think about your clients, Hillary, how many of your clients would feel financially secure if all that they could have left at the, if all that they were allowed to keep is $120,000, a house and a car? Now, I know for some people that would feel like a lot of money, but for our
That's
clients
destitute where
that
I
have
live.
saved and scrimped their whole lives, that feels very much like financial insecurity.
Yeah.
And so we are helping our clients save the amount over and above that that's going to give them some financial security. But without doing that legal planning, that is the writing on the wall, because that's what the law says you have to do if you haven't planned for it otherwise.
Okay. So, and what I'm gathering is that the mix of tools that you use is very complex. It's customized probably to each individual client. And so, but the net result of it, you're saying, is that people go into these facilities, they use a combination of their own money and Medicaid payments to pay for their care. And for how long can this go on? I mean, at the cost of $100,000 a year, I think I've read.
The remainder of their lives.
It goes on for the remainder of their lives.
Yep.
And the point is to preserve assets for the well spouse.
Yes, or for paying for the extras of the sick person that is within the facility. So for a single person, when we're preserving assets over and above, it's because that person may have needs that like for a single person, they are only allowed to keep $2,000 for the rest of their life.
Goodness
$2,000,
gracious.
period. Not a month, not a year. $2,000 for the rest of their life if they do no planning. And so we want to make sure that there's still a cushion of money there for if they ever can go home, for example, or B, if they need extras that they don't have the money to pay for it if they spend all their money down to $2,000, right? So we want to make sure that there's still money left in order to pay for the things that person's going to need.
Perfect. My impression of long-term care insurance is that there was a period of time where if you got a good policy, it's something that likely would pay out for you. But that these policies have become so expensive that the cost of the premiums is almost outweighing. It's like you could self-fund for the cost that people are paying for premiums. What do you think about long-term care insurance? What's your experience with it?
Yeah, well, I would say, yeah. I mean, listen, for people that have older policies that have been in place for many years, I wouldn't necessarily encourage those people to give them up. But would I encourage somebody to buy one today? No, I would not. Most of my clients, the only type of policy I would ever, at this moment that I've seen that I feel is a good bet for somebody is a life insurance policy that has a long-term care rider. But and I would only recommend it to somebody that's willing to put it inside a asset protection trust, because then you will have the ability to make a choice about which way you want that asset to go. The reality is long-term care insurance has no cap on premiums. Mm-hmm. Long-term care insurance will go up, and it will go up exponentially as you age. We've had people have 100 and 200% increases in their premiums as the years pass. And it's a never-ending cost, whereas by putting your money into, let's say, an asset protection trust, that's usually a one-time cost, or maybe a one-time plus, maybe some changes down the road, and have to pay year in and year out, and maybe you're going to use it and maybe you're not. And so these things can be used well together if you already have that kind of thing in existence. But long-term care insurance in today's market is a tricky animal, simply because they're very tricky to get paid out. People don't have good luck with them in our experience. I'm not saying that it's not possible. I'm just saying that we don't tend to see good results with long-term care insurance with our clients. And, this is what we do day in and day out here.
Yeah, that's my experience as well, anecdotally, albeit, that's not my 100% my role or view professionally, but it is my experience. And so just to circle back just for 1 second. So the product that you said you might recommend is, sounds like a universal life insurance policy with a long-term care rider, you said. So that's specifically not long-term care insurance, right?
Correct.
It starts.
And I really, and with my clients, I would say to them, only do it if you are willing to put it within an asset protection trust into this irrevocable trust, because then that gives you the ability to make a choice if and when something happens where you need to pull the trigger for long-term care, about whether you even want to, or about whether you might want to accept the higher benefit of the payout of the life insurance at death, and be able to put the wall around it. So that's the way I would always be advising my clients.
Okay, good. Thank you for that. And then so we talked about the cost of long-term care insurance. Let's talk about the cost of elder law planning. What can I typically tell people to expect between $2,000 and $5,000 for a revocable living trust, medical directives, and will that come together if you own real estate or after-tax assets. What can people expect for the cost of elder care planning?
It is very much based on so many factors, whether we're doing pre-planning or crisis planning. Because another thing I do want to make sure your audience understands is that there are certain types of things that almost always can be done, even when it's happening. It's now mom or dad is going into the nursing home right this minute. Oh my God, what are we going to do? How are we going to pay for this? Everybody's freaking out. Mm-hmm. There are many things that can be done even in that time of what we call crisis. The reality of the matter is if I save you $1, $2, $3, $4, $500,000, which is not only possible, but entirely likely, and I do it every single day here, mm-hmm. How much am I going to have to cost before I cost too much? Mm-hmm. Because I'm not going to charge you that much. So how much do I need to cost before it's too much? Because are you going to be willing to pay between $10,000 and $15,000 a month until you die with no end in sight, right? Because we don't know how long that's going to be. Or do you want to just pay me one time and get it taken care of? One of the biggest issues I think that happens with elder law planning, and one of the things that also we have a little bit of friction sometimes with people in financial services, is that it isn't necessarily about the cost, but it's about the value, right? And so the value of what you're going to receive from us is always, in my view, going to exceed the cost exponentially.
So what should you look for to know that your elder law attorney is a good one?
You want to know that they have a track record. You want to make sure that they're not just helping you do an elaborate spend down, which you could probably do yourself. And you want to make sure that there are clients that have been very satisfied, of course, with their services. In my office, you could look through. We have written out hundreds and hundreds of testimonials from our clients that are really happy with us, right? And so, these things help. But it's hard as a consumer to know the difference. I do believe that is definitely one of the challenges out there for people.
Okay, what do you say to people who come to you concerned about their parents? So I'm in my 40s or 50s. My parents are in their 70s or 80s. I actually have more savings and more income than my parents. They may be financially destitute. I'm concerned that I'm going to have to pay for their stay in a nursing home. What do you say to them? That's
definitely a conversation that's worth having with a good elder law attorney. We always want to make sure that our clients, so if you're the adult child of aging parents, we want to make sure that there's a good legal plan in place for you to take control without taking on the responsibility of debt. And so one of the things that we are very against in my office is putting your children on jointly as asset holders.
Okay.
Which is endemic. Right now, endemic. We do not want adult children of aging parents being joint asset holders. And there's actually a variety of reasons for that, but that's one of them.
Why would someone do that? Just so they could spend their own money, their kids can spend their money?
Oh, people do it all the time. I'll tell I can't tell you how many times people come into me and say, the lady at the bank told me that I should put my daughter on my account.
Oh my God.
Oh, it's all the time. And that people do it for the expediency of having somebody that can write checks for them, for example. What people don't understand is that joint ownership means that whoever's the joint owner has 100% ownership. And so just because you only put your daughter on there for expediency does not mean that if your daughter gets in a car accident and gets sued, that your bank account isn't going to necessarily be 100% liable or subject to that lawsuit. Or if your daughter gets divorced or whatever, right? So that's why we want to have either an asset held in a trust with your daughter as a joint or successor trustee, as opposed to being a power of and possibly a power of attorney. But having somebody be a joint or successor trustee is actually more powerful than a power of attorney document. So we want both, but definitely we prefer the trustee scenario because legally it's a more secure position.
Well, good to know. I myself have not seen, I am proud to say that my clients have never added their kids to their bank accounts or investment accounts. I never would recommend that. So, but I too have struggled with some of the advice given by bank employees. So that's good to hear you. Good to hear you talk about that. You definitely need to get your legal and financial advice from professionals.
Well, right. And what I want everybody to step back and think is, why would you take legal advice from somebody that's not a lawyer? You're not, like I tell people all the time, you're not going to take financial advice from me, the attorney. Why would you take legal advice from your financial planner or from your bank person? Like, that's crazy if you think about it.
Right. It is a little crazy. And people do it because they start to trust the person, or they think this person works at the bank. They must know. In many cases, in some cases, I've had bank employees of the trust and estates department give faulty estate advice.
Horrible.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that we, things like that happen a lot, and people are well-meaning, possibly. Like your neighbor is really well-meaning when they tell you have to do a spend down and that's your only option, but your neighbor is not a lawyer and your neighbor does not know that that's not true.
Yeah.
The lady at the hospital will tell you have to do that. The social worker at the hospital will tell you that. That doesn't mean that they know what they're talking about.
Right.
It just means that that's all they know based on their own experience, but they aren't qualified to give you legal advice.
Yeah. And unfortunately, human beings are far too inclined to give advice, even when they have no idea what they're talking about.
Right. And when you're under stress, people could be listening to this and they're like, well, I wouldn't listen to those people anyway. Well, you might, because when you are under stress and when you're in a situation where somebody you love is in a medical crisis and somebody is giving you well-meaning advice, trust me when I tell you, because I have very intelligent clients, that you may take their advice because you're so stressed out, you don't know what else to do, and you're just looking for the lifeline.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we see it all the time.
It's a really good point. So one question, and then I want to ask you for some client case studies, just a few real win stories that we can tell the audience. But my one question is, if I engage in elder law planning, if I put my assets in an irrevocable trust and I never end up needing nursing care. All right. I get hit by a bus at the age of 99. I'm in peak of health. What have I cost myself outside of the legal bills? Have I incurred any, have I incurred a cost? Have I lost freedom with my money? What happens?
Nope. Nothing. I mean, I always tell people, when you do that sort of asset protection planning like we do, you look at it, it's like insurance. Okay, so obviously I'm an attorney. I do not sell insurance. But when you put together a plan like that, it's like insurance. So I have homeowners insurance, not because I expect my house is going to burn down, but because just in case it does, I'm sure going to be glad I have the protection when I do.
Right.
I spend the money. I really don't ever expect to see it back, right?
No, you incur a certain cost, a certain small cost, to avoid the cost of an uncertain large cost.
Reward, right?
Yeah.
Risk reward. So same thing with this. You invest in putting a trust around your money in a way that protects it, not with the idea that you are certainly going to need nursing home care in the future, but just in case you do, you're sure going to be glad you have that layer of protection around it if you do, if you think about it in that way. So the cost associated with it is generally the cost associated with hiring your attorney to put it together and get it all together, right? There should be, outside of normal maintenance of a trust, which is usually just when people change their minds about things or things like that, there should be no additional cost to it if the attorney knows what they're doing.
Yeah. And
the worst case scenario is you still should have a really darn good death plan that avoids probate. So you haven't wasted your money.
Right. Very good.
And so that's the way to look at it.
Okay. So can you tell me the stories, obviously anonymously, of one or two clients who you really at the end of the day feel like you put your superhero cape on and made a huge difference for that family, just so people can get a sense and reality of what life is like when you've done proper planning?
Yeah. So I have a client that I'm going to call Bill,
Mm-hmm.
for example, that his wife was in a facility in my market area. And finally, his stepdaughter, his wife's daughter, dragged him to my office. And he had been paying for a year of care for his wife up to this point. So he had paid a little more than $100,000 at this point when he came to see me. And the daughter said, "You got to help us. I don't want Bill, my stepdad, to go broke over this. And I want to, what's going to happen when he runs out of money?" All the questions that people have. And so at that point, what we did was we planned around the rest of Bill's money. He no longer paid for his wife's, and he was a relatively younger guy. He was 68 and in good health. So he wasn't somebody that we expected to die within the next couple of years. He had, potentially 20 more years of life expectancy. So we put a wall around the rest of his money, got his wife. She remained in the same facility with the same level of care that she had been receiving until the day that she died, and we protected the rest of his money. And so this is something like this Bill person, this is something, he paid for a year, but it wasn't too late even at that point. And we protected what was left, which was around 500,000.
Wow. You could tell another win story, or conversely, we could engage the fear part of the brain and we could talk about someone who didn't take your advice or didn't pay for planning and you watched things go really badly for them.
Well, okay, so I have an example of something that just came to me last week. So just last week, I had a family that came to me for themselves. So here's adult children that came to me about estate planning for themselves. And part of what spurred that was this person had a spouse that died prematurely. So this is somebody in their late 60s, had a spouse that died prematurely. Now they had come to, like a workshop that I had done a couple of years together before he died, but they never did anything about their estate planning. So then he passes away unexpectedly, and now this wife is left, and she's coming to me about her estate planning. But in the course of the conversation, it also comes to light that a parent was currently in a nursing home, and they had sold the house and they had spent all the money down. And I was shocked at this because this is somebody that had come to a workshop and had heard me say, you don't have to do this. We can protect the money. You don't have to accept the spend down. They had heard me say this. So, and I think this is really, truly something that people need to hear. Like, this is somebody that literally heard me say it. Them and their spouse, two people heard me say it. And yet, when it happened to somebody in their family, their brains could not get past what non-legal people had told them. And by the time she came into me, she wasn't even thinking about that anymore. She was only thinking about her own stuff. But mom had almost spent every single dime at this point. And so the ship had sailed. All the money was gone. And they'd sold the house and spent all that money too. The ship had sailed. And so we're talking several $100,000, of which some of that, and mom may still live another 10, 15 years.
And so what's she going to do, right? She's left with now nothing. Her nest egg is gone.
And so if mom ever needs any extras while she's in nursing home, the kids are going to have to pony up or she's going to have to go without. And so that was, to me, tragic. But it was exactly, and this is not an unintelligent person. I mean, this is the thing. I don't want people to believe that stuff like this happens to people that are just dumb. It doesn't. My clients, I live in an area that is primarily college educated people, engineers. I mean, my clients are intelligent people. It's just that when you are stressed, you don't necessarily make good decisions and you listen to the wrong advice. And this is exactly like somebody that even had heard me say that still allowed this to happen to somebody that they care about. And she was horrified in our meeting, horrified.
I can't even imagine grappling with that you spent down or allowed your own nest egg or your parents' nest egg to be spent down unnecessarily. Just like the sense of loss is tremendous.
This is an example of, you can hear it. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to act on it. Mm-hmm. And so you really need to start engaging in the planning, because that's what makes you act.
So to what do you attribute all this misinformation? Is it because what you do is complex and people don't understand it? Is it because the government doesn't want people to know that losses can be avoided? Why do you think you have to be such a champion of information?
Well, both of those things that you just said, facilities particularly have a vested interest in you not knowing this information.
Yeah.
And so, so there's that. There are political reasons sometimes too why people will avoid this topic. I will say, a lot of people believe that depending on what your political views are, you may look at this as something that is inappropriate or
shirking
immoral.
Responsibilities. Yeah.
That being said, my client base is from the political persuasion that would be most likely to look that way.
Uh-huh.
And they are the ones that are the first ones to do it. Uh-huh. Because when you are actually faced with the reality of what it means, most people are going to want to protect themselves, right?
Right.
And when you've been married to somebody for 20, 30, 40 years, your first job is to take care of them.
That's right. Well, and we talked a little earlier about how to vet your attorney. So in my business with my team, I always talk about the emblems of trust. We have to display the emblems of trust. And so you're looking for an attorney who's displaying those emblems of trust. And one of the things you talked about was client testimonials and your track record and like that. So let's hope people look out for that. Let's talk about how to hire an attorney. Are you working only with clients in the state of Michigan?
Yeah, I do tons of advising outside of Michigan, but I only take clients in the state of Michigan. I am licensed in Hawaii, like I said, but I don't hold an active license in the state of Hawaii currently.
Okay. And so where should people start looking for someone near them?
Couple National Association of Elder Law Attorneys, NALA. Mm-hmm. They have a list of attorneys that practice elder law. There's a group called Elder Council. There's a group called Lawyers with Purpose. Mm-hmm. These are all practice groups of attorneys that are dedicated to actually practice of elder law. Every state bar has a elder law section. Mm-hmm. But that's a way to start, but don't assume that, like I said, just because somebody calls themselves an elder law attorney, that they do have the expertise. Not all elder law attorneys do.
Well, you're a wealth of knowledge. I truly appreciate your time. Obviously, it's very valuable to have such specialized knowledge. And I think it's a very important topic that people need to know about. So we really appreciate it. We'll refer people to your book. So if you're interested in getting a copy of Nicole's book, just go to hillaryhendershot.com/120. This is episode 120. And I'll link you to the show notes for this episode. But the book is called Dear Mom and Dad, Help Me Help You. And Nicole, you said there's a new issue of the book, new updated version of the book coming out soon, right?
We're trying to get an updated version of the book out by the end of this year, 2018. That being said, anybody that goes and gets it on Amazon now is still going to have very, very up-to-date information because I just published it in 2016.
Yeah, I'm sure most of it is totally timeless. Okay. Well, thanks for joining us on Profit Boss Radio, Nicole.
Thank you so much for talking about this really important topic.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Profit Boss Radio. I do offer comprehensive fiduciary fee-only financial planning services to high net worth individuals with $500,000 or more to invest. If you think I might be the right person to work with you and your family to achieve the things that are important to you, we'd love to have a quick, no commitment conversation just to see if we both think we might be a good fit to work together. You can reach out in two ways. Find the contact form on my website at hillaryhendershot.com and click on contact, or call my toll-free number, 877-569-5508. That's 877-569-5508. And all you're committing to is a quick conversation just to see if we both think we'd be a good fit to work together. See you next week on Profit Boss Radio.